The doors of the black sedan swing open before the car fully stops. 3 men step out at the exact same moment, moving like they rehearsed it, like the world slows down specifically for them. Black suits, no badges, no names on the building they just pulled up to. Just 3 sets of hard eyes scanning the courtyard of Harrington Elite Academy the way soldiers scan a field before deciding whether to advance or destroy. Every student in that courtyard stops breathing, not because of the cars, 4 of them, black, windows tinted to absolute darkness, engines so quiet you feel them more than you hear them. Not because of the men in earpieces fanning out along the perimeter with the practiced calm of people who have done this 100 times in places far more dangerous than a Manhattan private school. They stop breathing because of the 3 men walking. Because men who walk like that, shoulders back, chins level, every footstep landing like punctuation, don't come to schools. Men like that send lawyers, they send letters, they send money. They don't come in person with their faces in the open and their hands loose at their sides like they're prepared for whatever happens next. The whispers start before the men even reach the front steps. A girl near the fountain grabs her friend's sleeve, a junior with a camera phone lifts it and then immediately puts it back in his pocket. Something about the way the tallest of the 3 men glances in his direction makes the phone feel like a liability. A teacher steps out of the side entrance, takes one look, and steps back inside without a word. The 3 men don't look at any of them. They're looking for something specific. Someone specific. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Because 2 floors up, in a classroom that smells like chalk dust and the particular staleness of textbooks nobody actually reads, a 16-year-old boy named Dorian Whitfield sits at the second desk from the window. His silver-white hair catches the morning light. His dark glasses sit perfectly straight on his face. His white cane rests against his knee at a careful angle, and his fingers are moving, lightly, early touching, across a sheet of raised braille as his teacher explains the collapse of the French monarchy. He is not thinking about power. He is not thinking about legacy. He is thinking about whether the cafeteria will have the turkey sandwich today, because yesterday they were out and he had to eat a dry wrap that tasted like cardboard, wrapped in sadder cardboard. He does not know 3 men just pulled up to his school with his photograph in a folder. He does not know that the word son is already on the tallest man's lips. He does not know that before this day ends, the life he has quietly, carefully, normally lived for 16 years will be over. Down in the principal's office, the man at the front desk, a stocky, unimpressed administrator named Mr. Calloway, who has worked at Harrington for 11 years and has seen everything, looks at the 3 men standing in his lobby and feels, for the first time in 11 years, like he has not seen everything. The tallest one steps forward. Dark eyes, a jaw that looks like it was carved with intention. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't have to. We're here for Dorian Whitfield. Mr. Calloway looks at him, looks at the 2 behind him, looks back. Do you have an appointment? The man doesn't answer that. He places a folder on the desk with the measured precision of someone who knows exactly what's inside it and exactly what it will do to the room once it's opened. Mr. Calloway opens it. He reads the first page, then the second. He looks up. He looks back down. He reads the first page again. I'll need to call the principal, he says. Of course, the tall man says. We'll wait. They sit down in the blue plastic chairs beside the bulletin board, advertising tryouts for the spring musical. 3 of the most feared men on the eastern seaboard, sitting in chairs designed for people roughly half their size, in a room that smells like hand sanitizer and photocopy toner. One of them, the one with the long hair, picks up a flyer about a bake sale, reads it, and sets it back down. Nobody speaks. The school secretary pretends to type. 3 minutes later, Principal Deandra Hayes walks in. She is 54 years old. She has a PhD, 17 years of experience, and the particular posture of a woman who is not easily rattled. She looks at the three men. She accepts the folder from Mr. Calloway. She reads. Her face does something complicated. "Gentlemen," she says carefully, "I appreciate you coming in person, but without established legal standing and without the student's knowledge or consent." "The student's name is Dorian Whitfield," the tall man says. "His name is Zayden. He is 16 years old. He uses a white cane. He's in second period right now." A pause. "His mother's name is Amelia. She raised him alone. She's being very careful about that." Something in the way he says careful makes Principal Hayes's pencil stop moving. "And your relationship to him is documented in that folder." She looks at the folder again. "This will require verification," she says. "We know," the one named Khalil says, the one with the long hair who was reading the bake sale flyer. His voice is quieter than the other two, more careful, like each word costs something. "We're prepared to wait as long as it takes." The third one, Remington, the middle brother, hasn't spoken at all. He's been looking at the hallway door since they sat down, looking at it like he's calculating the number of steps between this chair and wherever Dorian Whitfield is right now. Principal Hayes excuses herself. The door closes behind her. Zayden exhales through his nose, one slow breath. He looks at his brothers. Khalil is still holding the bake sale flyer. Remington finally looks away from the door. If the verification hits the sealed record. "Xavier," Zayden catches himself. Old habit, new name in civilian spaces. He lowers his voice to something that barely qualifies as sound. "It'll hit the sealed record. We know it will. We planned for that." "We planned for that assuming we had more time," Remington says. "We don't have more time." "I know." They look at each other, the particular look of people who have been in the same rooms during the worst moments of the last 20 years and know exactly what the other one is thinking without needing to say it. Up on the second floor, Dorian tilts his head. He can't see anything. He never has. But he has spent 16 years learning to read a building the way other people read faces. Through sound, vibration, the quality of silence, the way air moves through spaces when something changes. His mother taught him that. She said, "The world doesn't go quiet for nothing. When it gets this still, pay attention." The school is too quiet right now. Not empty quiet, not boring quiet. The other kind. The kind that happens when a large number of people are very deliberately not making noise about something. He tilts his head just slightly and listens harder. Somewhere below him, a door opened and closed twice in the last 4 minutes. Fast. Urgent. The kind of door movement that happens when adults are trying to solve a problem before it becomes a bigger one. He heard shoes, hard soles, heavy, multiple people, in a pattern that doesn't match the usual morning traffic. Too deliberate, too synchronized. Not teachers, not parents. Something is happening, he thinks. He almost goes back to his braille sheet. He doesn't, because then the classroom door opens and Mrs. Coleman, his homeroom advisor, steps in with the specific expression she reserves for news she doesn't entirely understand yet. She crosses to his desk. She crouches down to his level. She always does that. He's told her twice she doesn't have to. She keeps doing it. And she says quietly, "Dorian, the principal would like to see you in her office." He keeps his face neutral. 16 years of practice. "Am I in trouble?" "No, honey," she says, and there's something in her voice that isn't exactly a lie, but isn't exactly the truth either. "There are just some people who'd like to speak with you." People. Plural. He reaches for his cane. On the ground floor, Zayden is on his feet before the office door opens. He doesn't know why. He just is. His body made the decision before his brain caught up. Remington stands 2 seconds later. Khalil sets down the bake sale flyer. They hear footsteps in the hall. Light, even, the tap of a cane on marble. Slow. Not slow like hesitation. Slow like someone who is choosing exactly how fast they want to approach a room they're not sure about yet. The door opens. Dorian Whitfield stands in the doorway. Silver-white hair, dark glasses, school uniform pressed with the precision of someone who cares about being taken seriously in spite of every reason the world has given him not to bother. He is small. Not weak, not even slightly weak, but physically smaller than any of them imagined. 16 and slight, and standing with his chin lifted at an angle that says, "I am not afraid of this room, even though I should probably be a little afraid of this room." He turns his face toward Xaden, not toward the door, not toward the center of the room, toward Xaden specifically, like he can already tell where the gravity is. "You asked to see me," Dorian says. His voice is even, controlled, older than his face. Nobody moves. Nobody speaks. 3 men who have faced down armed rivals, corrupt government officials, and every manner of threat the world has produced, are standing in a school principal's office, and not one of them can find a single word because they are looking at a 16-year-old boy with their cheekbones, and their mother's stubborn chin, and their grandmother's silver hair. A genetic signature so specific it only shows up once a generation. And the word son is hanging in the air, so loud it might as well be spoken. Khalil is the one who moves first. 1 step, just one. Then he stops, like he's not sure he has the right, like the distance between where he's standing and where Dorian is standing is not 6 feet of office carpet, but 16 years of a life he wasn't there for and can't take back. Dorian hears the step. His head tracks toward Khalil. "You're the quiet one," Dorian says. Not a question, a conclusion. Khalil blinks. "You moved last," Dorian says, "but slowest. That's the one paying the most attention." His head tilts back towards Xaden. "You're the tallest. You breathe the loudest. Not nervous loud, control loud, like you're used to being the biggest thing in the room." Back to Remington. "And you haven't made a sound since I walked in. That either means you're the calmest or the most wrecked." A pause. "I think it's the second one." Remington's jaw tightens. Principal Hayes is standing near the window. She looks like a woman watching something that she knows she should probably intervene in, but also knows is far above her pay grade. "Dorian," Xaden says, his voice comes out different than he intended. Rougher, more human. "There's something we need to tell you." "You could start with your names," Dorian says. Xaden Voss. Khalil Voss. Remington quietly. Remington Voss. Dorian is still. His fingers have stopped moving on his cane. Something moves through his expression. Not shock, not yet. Something more like the face of someone who has been carrying a question for a long time and just heard the first syllable of the answer. "Voss," he says. "Yes." "That's not my name." "No," Xaden says. "Your mother chose a different name, to keep you safe." The word safe lands in the room like something dropped from a height. Dorian's fingers tighten around the cane. 1 breath. 2. "From what?" he says, and none of them answer fast enough, because the answer is long. The answer involves 16 years of choices made by a woman who knew more than any of them gave her credit for. The answer involves a contract that predates all of them, and a rival family that has been patient enough to wait until exactly this move. The answer, if given fully and honestly, will change everything Dorian Whitfield has ever understood about his life. But before Xaden can decide where to start, before any of them can find the beginning of a story this size, Remington's phone vibrates against his palm. Once. The specific pattern, the one that means their head of security is sending a Tier 1 alert. Remington looks at the screen. His face doesn't change. Remington's face never changes, but his eyes do. Something behind them goes from carefully controlled to absolutely still, the way water goes still right before it freezes. He holds the phone so Zayden can see. 4 words on the screen. They're already inside. Harrington. Zayden looks up slowly. Across the room, Dorian cannot see the phone. He cannot see their faces. But he can hear things that people forget to hide. The half-second of silence that falls between 2 men who just received terrible news. The way breathing changes. The specific quality of a room when everyone in it just realized the threat came from the wrong direction. His chin lifts. "Something just happened," he says. It is not a question, and no one in that room tries to tell him otherwise. Remington is the first one out of the principal's office. No explanation, no instruction. He moves through the door in one motion. Jacket back, hand at his side, eyes already working the hallway. And the 2 bodyguards stationed near the stairwell lock onto him immediately and fall into position without a word. Zayden is 2 steps behind him. He turns back in the doorway, looks at Principal Hayes. "Lock this building down. No one in or out through the main entrance until I say otherwise." She opens her mouth. "Now," he says. "Please." The please is an afterthought, but he means it. Khalil is the last one through. He stops at the door, looks back at Dorian. Dorian hasn't moved from the center of the room. He's standing exactly where he was, cane planted, chin level, dark glasses pointed at the wall where Khalil is standing. His expression is the most difficult thing Khalil has seen in a long time. Not scared, not confused, waiting. 16 years old and already carrying stillness like someone who has learned that panicking costs more than it buys. "Stay in this room," Khalil says. "What's happening?" "We're checking something." "That's not an answer." "I know," Khalil says, and then, because something about the way this boy stands refuses to be dismissed with half-truths, "Someone we didn't account for is in this building. We don't know their position or their intention yet. Until we do, this room is the safest place you can be." Dorian tilts his head just slightly. "You're telling me the truth?" "Yes. Your brothers don't always do that. We all have different styles. What's your name again?" "Khalil." Dorian nods once, like he's filing it. "Don't be long," he says. Khalil closes the door. In the hallway, the school has already started responding to whatever Principal Hayes is doing. The intercom crackles, students start appearing in doorways, the usual low-level mid-morning noise shifts into something sharper and more uncertain. Teachers are stepping into hallways looking for direction. A group of sophomores near the water fountain stares at Remington's bodyguards and then presses themselves against the wall. Remington is at the east corridor already. His phone is in his hand. He's running a real-time schematic of the building. Khalil had pulled Harrington's floor plans 2 nights ago as a standard precautionary measure, which is looking like the best decision any of them made this week. 3 possibilities, Remington says without looking up. East stairwell, service entrance at sub-level, or they came in with the morning deliveries before we arrived. Morning delivery window was 6:50 to 7:30, Zayden says. We got here at 7:43. Zayden looks at him. They knew our timeline. They knew our timeline, Remington confirms. The bodyguard closest to them, a man named Trevon, who has been with the Voss family for 9 years and has exactly one facial expression, regardless of situation, says quietly, "Sir, service corridor. Left side camera just went offline." Remington is already moving. The service corridor is in the basement. It runs the full length of the building and connects the kitchen, boiler room, and the old storage spaces that Harrington converted into overflow offices 3 years ago. It smells like industrial cleaner and old pipes, and the specific cold of spaces that don't get much light. Fluorescent lights flicker at irregular intervals. Remington reaches the bottom of the stairs first, stops. One hand goes up, the others freeze behind him. There is a door at the far end of the corridor. It's open. It shouldn't be open. There's a chain on the inside latch. It hasn't been cut, it's been pushed through, which means someone who knew exactly how the latch worked from the inside. Xaden steps up beside him. They look at each other. Someone gave them the floor plan, Xaden thinks, and that thought pulls at something colder underneath it. Someone inside the Voss operation talked. Not a stranger, not a rival who got lucky. Someone who had access to information that was only shared in a room with 3 people in it last night. 3 people, and he's looking at 2 of them right now. He knows it's not them. But the math is what the math is. Trevon holds up his phone. Got a visual from the northeast corner camera before it went down. 1 individual, male, medium build, dark jacket. He wasn't carrying anything visible, but his hands were wrong. Wrong how? Khalil says. Wrong like someone who's used to carrying something and is currently making the specific effort not to. Remington absorbs this. He's not here to make a scene, he's here to confirm. Confirm what? Khalil asks, though he already knows. That we came, that we brought the boy out, that the news is worth delivering to whoever sent him. Remington's jaw shifts. He's a relay, not an action. Not today. Today, Xaden repeats. Today, Remington agrees, and the weight in that one word is considerable. They're not in the basement to stop an attack. There is no attack, not yet, not here. They're in the basement because someone in this building just watched the Voss brothers walk into a school and make contact with a 16-year-old blind boy. And by sundown, that information will be sitting in front of people who have been waiting for exactly that confirmation for years. The countdown didn't start when they got the photograph. It started this morning, the moment they stepped out of those cars. Xaden moves to the open door, looks through. The alley beyond is empty. He looks at the ground. There, just inside the threshold, a single clean scuff mark in the grime on the floor. Someone moved fast and deliberately. They were already gone. Pull all the morning footage from the front gate, Xaden says to Trayvon. I want a face. Trayvon nods and steps away with his phone. Khalil is already heading back toward the stairs, back toward the principal's office, back toward Dorian. He takes the stairs 2 at a time, which is notable because Khalil Voss does not generally rush for anything. He rounds the 2nd floor landing and walks fast down the hall, past the staring students and the confused teacher who tries to stop him with a lanyard and a question and receives nothing but a look in return. He reaches the principal's office and pushes the door open. Principal Hayes is standing near her desk. Dorian is sitting in one of the chairs, not the one he was directed to, a different one, closer to the window. He turned the chair slightly toward the wall so his back is to the room's main sightline. Khalil notes this without comment. Deliberate positioning. A blind person who has figured out, without ever being taught, the logic of not putting yourself in the center of a room when a threat hasn't been located yet. Emilia taught him that too. You came back, Dorian says. I said I would. How long? 8 minutes. What did you find? Khalil pulls the other chair around and sits directly across from him, close enough to speak without the room hearing. Someone was in the building who shouldn't have been. They're gone. They were here to observe, not to act. Observe what? You and us together. Dorian goes still in the specific way he goes still. Not frozen, not shut down, but concentrated, like all his attention, just folded inward, and is now running calculations Khalil can't see. So someone knows I exist, Dorian says. Yes. And they know you exist. They've always known we exist. And now they know the 2 things are connected. Yes. Which is the part that matters. Khalil looks at this 16-year-old boy, this kid who was in a French history class 40 minutes ago thinking about turkey sandwiches. Yes, he says, that's the part that matters. Dorian breathes in slowly through his nose. You were going to tell me something. Before. In here. Before your brother got the alert. Yes. You should tell me now. A pause. Whatever it is, I think I deserve to hear it before anyone else in a dark jacket does anything with it. Khalil doesn't argue that. He leans forward, elbows on his knees, and for a moment, he just looks at the boy. At the silver hair and the steady jaw, and the hands that are resting completely loose in his lap, in a way that communicates he is not going to fall apart, whatever comes next. He has decided that in advance. Khalil can see it. Your mother, Khalil says, worked for our family, before you were born. She was part of our household, and she was important to us, all three of us. He measures each word. You were not a coincidence. You were not an accident. And she did not leave because she stopped caring about us. Dorian's hands tighten on his knees, just slightly. Then why did she leave? Because she found out something about our family's history, something that made her understand that keeping you near us would put you in a position she couldn't protect you from. Khalil breathes. She made a choice, a hard one. She chose to disappear so that you could live quietly, safely. The room is completely silent, except for the muffled sound of the school outside. An intercom announcement, distant footsteps, the ordinary chaos of a building that doesn't know what's happening in this office. She never told me, Dorian says. His voice is level, still. But there is something underneath it now, a tightness that wasn't there before, like a string pulled half a note past where it's comfortable. No, Khalil says. She carried it alone. For 16 years. Yes. Dorian turns his face slightly toward the window. Not looking. He can't look, but orienting. Like sunlight is a kind of information he can read. You said she was important to all three of you, he says slowly. He lets the sentence hang there, unfinished, on purpose. Khalil doesn't look away. Yes. How important? Khalil doesn't answer immediately, and the silence is its own answer. Dorian's chin comes down. His jaw shifts. He runs the geometry of the thing. 3 men, 1 woman, 1 son, 1 shared last name on a legal document in a folder that Principal Hayes is currently staring at from across the room without touching it. Oh, Dorian says, very quietly. Yes, Khalil says. Another silence, longer this time, the kind that needs space. That's, Dorian starts, stops, starts again. That's a lot. I know. I need a minute. Take whatever you need. Dorian sits with it. 1 breath, 2. The school continues existing around them. A bell rings somewhere down the hall, announcing a period change. Dozens of pairs of feet start moving through corridors, shoes on tile, voices overlapping, the completely normal sound of a world that doesn't know that something irreversible just happened in the principal's office. The people who were watching, Dorian says finally, they're not done. No. They're going to come back. Yes, with more preparation. Which means I can't stay here. He says it plainly, not a question, not a complaint, an assessment. No, Khalil says, you can't stay here. My mother. We're reaching her. Dorian nods slowly. His hand finds the cane. He doesn't stand yet, but his body is already shifting into something new. Not a student in a school chair, but someone who is about to have to move and has already begun deciding how. I've never met anyone from my father's side, he says. He uses the word father carefully, like he's testing whether it fits, whether it breaks anything by being said out loud. We know, Khalil says. I don't know what to call you. You don't have to call us anything yet. Dorian turns his face back toward him. Dark glasses, lifted chin, and something on his face that is not quite trust. Trust is built, not handed over, and he knows that, but is something adjacent to it. Something like, I'm choosing to believe you for now because the alternative is choosing to believe nothing, and I can't afford that today. Okay, Dorian says. He stands up, picks up his cane, straightens his uniform jacket with the automatic precision of someone who does it without thinking. Let's go. They step out of the principal's office together. Khalil and the boy who carries 16 years of a secret he didn't know he was the subject of. And at the end of the hallway, Zayden and Remington are standing, waiting, watching them come. And all three brothers, for just 1 second, forget everything else. Because watching Dorian Whitfield walk toward them, steady, cane-tapping rhythm, chin up, completely unbroken, is one of the most difficult and extraordinary things any of them have experienced in a life that has not been short on either. They fall in around him instinctively, the way they always do with something they're protecting, and Dorian stops for a moment, feeling the shift of bodies closing in on either side. You're all doing the thing, he says. Remington looks at him. What thing? The closing in thing. My mother does it when she's worried. She moves closer without saying why. Zayden clears his throat. We can adjust, Khalil says. No, Dorian says, and he starts walking again. It's okay. But as they move through the corridor toward the building's rear exit, Trevon appears at the end of the hall. He's looking at his phone. He looks up. His expression, that one expression, the one that never changes, is doing something it very rarely does. He holds the phone screen towards Zayden. One photograph, clear, time-stamped from the front gate camera this morning before the other cameras went offline. A face, male, 40-something, heavy jaw, a scar along the left side of his chin. Zayden knows that face. He has not seen it in 11 years. The last time he saw it was at a negotiation table. Before things went wrong, before lines were drawn, before the name Dragan became a word they only said indoors with the doors closed. He stops walking. Remington leans over and looks at the screen. He stops too. Because the man in the photograph is not an operative. He's not muscle. He's not a relay. He is the eldest son of Vasile Dragan, and he was at Dorian's school, standing at the gate, watching, at 7:19 this morning, before the Voss brothers arrived. Not to observe and report, not to confirm what they suspected, he already knew. He had known before today. Which means the Dragons didn't find Dorian by following the Voss brothers. The Dragons found Dorian another way, and they've been watching him longer than anyone knew. The car moves through Manhattan at a pace that feels casual from the outside. Inside, nobody is casual. Dorian sits in the middle of the back seat, Khalil on his left, Remington on his right, Zayden in the front passenger seat with his phone pressed to his ear and his voice down low enough that the words are sounds without shape. The city moves past the tinted windows, horns, construction, a woman walking a dog the size of a small horse. Everything ordinary and completely indifferent to the fact that something has gone badly wrong. Dorian can feel the weight in the car, the way you feel pressure change before weather. You stopped explaining to each other, he says. He's not accusing anyone, just noting. Remington looks at him. You were talking before, Dorian says. Low, fast, the kind of talking people do when they're solving something. Now you're all quiet, which means either you've solved it or it's worse than you thought. Khalil says without inflection, it's worse than we thought. How much worse? Nobody answers for a moment. Zayden pulls the phone from his ear and turns in the front seat. He looks at Dorian with the particular directness of a man who has decided that under-explaining is more dangerous right now than the truth. The person we found at your school this morning, he wasn't there because of us. He was there before us, which means he's had your location for longer than we have. Dorian absorbs this. How much longer? We don't know yet. Best estimate? Remington answers that one. Months, possibly more. Silence. He's been watching me for months, Dorian says, and I didn't know. Watching, Remington says carefully, not acting. There's a difference, and the difference matters. He was waiting, Dorian says. Yes. For what? For confirmation, Xaden says. The Dragon family has an old legal claim against ours. A contract, predates all of us. It becomes void if our bloodline produces a verified direct heir. A beat. He was waiting to confirm that you exist and that we know you exist. Because the moment those two things are simultaneously true, the contract becomes void. But also, you become the most valuable leverage in the world to anyone who wants to hold something over us. Dorian is quiet. The car hits a red light. A cab driver leans on his horn. The sound is sharp and completely out of place with the density of what's happening inside this vehicle. So I'm worth more to them as a threat against you than as anything else, Dorian says. Yes, Xaden says, and he doesn't soften it. And before today, you weren't certain I existed. Before 3 days ago, no. And before you were certain, you couldn't verify the contract or void it. Correct. Dorian folds his hands in his lap. His jaw is set. So my mother wasn't hiding me from you, he says. It's not entirely a question. She was hiding me from the people who would use me against you. Nobody corrects him. He tilts his head toward the window. 16 years. His mother, who he has known as the quietest, most careful person in any room, who double locks every door, who changes their walking routes without explanation, who never uses the same grocery store 2 weeks in a row, who once sat him down when he was 12 years old and told him that some people in this world have enemies, and the safest thing those people can do for the ones they love is make the ones they love invisible. 16 years of choices that he always thought were just her nature, just her caution, just the particular anxiety of a blind single mother raising a child alone in a city that doesn't make anything easy. Not anxiety, architecture. A 16-year construction of invisibility, so precise that even the people she was hiding him from, the men she actually trusted, the men whose blood ran in the boy beside her, couldn't find him through ordinary means. Something hard moves through Dorian's chest. Not grief. Not yet. Something more complicated than grief, the particular ache of discovering that the person you thought you understood completely was running on a level you couldn't even see. She knew about this contract, he says. Xaden goes still. She knew, Dorian says again, and she never told you. We think she found out after she left, Khalil says. No. Dorian shakes his head once, small, certain. She knew before. I don't know how I know that, but I know it. The three brothers look at each other over his head. Why do you say that? Remington asks. Dorian turns his face toward the window again. When I was 9 years old, she had a very specific conversation with me. She said, "There are people in this world who will try to define you by who your family is before they find out who you are." She said, "Don't let them. Your name is yours. Your choices are yours." I didn't understand what she meant then. I thought she was just talking about being a kid who was different. A pause. She wasn't talking about being different. The car is silent. She was warning me, Dorian says. She was preparing me for this conversation, specifically. He turns his face slightly toward Khalil. She knew this day was coming. She's known for a long time. Khalil says nothing, but his hand, resting on the seat between them, shifts. Not quite touching, just closer. The car turns left, heading north. away from Harrington, away from Brooklyn, away from the two-bedroom apartment with the leaking radiator and the braille marks on the kitchen wall that Dorian has been memorizing since he was 3 years old. His phone buzzes in his jacket pocket. He already knows before he gets it out. He knows the specific pattern of this buzz. 3 short pulses, the pattern his mother set up years ago. The one that means, I need to reach you, and I need you to pick up. Not in a minute, now. He gets it out, answers. Mom? Her voice is there immediately, steady, quieter than usual. The quiet she uses when she is in a public space and needs to be overheard by no one. Dorian, are you safe? I'm in a car. I know, are you safe? He glances to his left, to his right. Yes. Good. A breath. Okay, good. Another breath, and the steadiness holds, but underneath it there is something else. Relief so dense, it's almost sound. Are you with them? A beat. You knew they were coming. She doesn't answer that. Mom! I knew someone was moving, she says carefully. I wasn't certain it would be today. But you knew eventually. Dorian. You knew, he says, not angry, not yet. Something that hasn't decided what it is. And you didn't tell me. The silence on the other end of the line lasts exactly long enough to confirm everything. There are things, she starts, that I deserved to know, he says, before men in black suits showed up at my school and told me I have 3 fathers. In the front seat, Zayden very carefully looks out the window. Khalil finds a point on the ceiling. Remington doesn't move at all, but something in his expression does the thing it almost never does. Something that looks like a man who is listening to a conversation he didn't know he needed to hear. Yes, Amelia says on the phone, very quietly. You deserve to know before that. Are you safe? I'm... A pause. There are some things I need to handle on my end. I'll explain everything when I see you. Where are you? Dorian. Where are you, Mom? The line goes quiet in a way that is not interference or signal drop. It's the quiet of someone who is deciding how much truth to deploy right now and is calculating the cost. The Connecticut property, she says. You know the one. He does. He has never been there, but he knows it. She described it to him once. Cedar smell. Kitchen with a loose tile. A wall near the light switch that she said had a special kind of memory. He used to think that was poetry, one of her quiet, specific ways of speaking. He is starting to think it was a set of instructions. I'll come there, he says. Wait until... I'll come there. His voice doesn't rise. It just settles into something that isn't 16 and isn't a student and isn't the boy who was thinking about turkey sandwiches this morning. We need to talk in person, not like this. A long pause. Okay, she says. Okay, baby, come. She hangs up. Dorian holds the phone in both hands for a moment. Then he reaches forward and taps Zayden on the shoulder. Zayden turns. We need to go to Connecticut, Dorian says. We know that property, Zayden says. His voice is careful. She told you. We helped her buy it, years ago, under a name we helped her establish. He pauses. She made us promise to never use it for our purposes, to leave it entirely in her control. She trusted you with that. She trusted us with that. Dorian processes this. Then you've always known where she was. We've always known where the property was. We agreed to never confirm whether she was there. Zayden meets his eyes in the rear-view mirror, or rather, meets his glasses, which is close enough. We kept that promise for 9 years. Something moves across Dorian's face. She told me people are defined by whether they keep the hard promises, the ones that cost them something. Zayden doesn't respond to that immediately. He turns back to the front. After a moment, he says, "She used to say that to us too." The driver changes lanes. The city starts to thin. Buildings get shorter. Sky opens up in the gaps between structures, grey, blue, and cold, and full of all the space that Manhattan doesn't have. Dorian leans back. He doesn't close his eyes. There's nothing to close in the way most people think of it, but something in his posture shifts, settles. The specific physical vocabulary of someone who has received a very large amount of information, is filing it correctly, and is now waiting for the next thing. "Tell me about the contract," he says. Remington, who has been almost completely silent since the car left Harrington, is the one who answers. His voice is low, careful. He speaks the way people speak when they're translating something complex into plain language without losing the weight of it. He tells Dorian about the founding agreement between the Voss family and the Dragons, about how it was built on the assumption that the Voss bloodline would die out, that 3 alpha brothers, none of whom had ever shown interest in building a conventional family, would eventually pass without heirs. About how the Eastern operations, territory, infrastructure, 3 decades of carefully built power, would default to the Dragon family when that happened. About how Vasile Dragon had spent 11 years banking on that outcome, investing in it, making business decisions that assumed it. About how a 16-year-old boy named Dorian Whitfield just made 11 years of planning obsolete. Dorian listens without interrupting. He asks no questions until Remington stops. Then he says, "So they need me gone." "They need the claim to remain unverified," Remington says. "That's the same thing." Remington doesn't argue. "And the verification," Dorian says slowly. "Can it be challenged?" Khalil sits up slightly. "What do you mean?" "The DNA documentation, the legal filing. Can they dispute it, challenge its validity?" "Not the genetic evidence," Khalil says, "but the legal filing. If they moved fast enough, if they had the right people in the right positions, in the right courts, there might be a window to challenge jurisdiction." "How long a window?" Khalil and Remington look at each other. 72 hours, Khalil says. "Maybe less. If they file a counterclaim within the verification period, everything freezes until it's resolved in arbitration." "And during arbitration?" "Everything is in play," Remington says. "All claims, all counterclaims, all parties, at the table, exposed, in a legal framework that neither of us fully controls." Dorian is quiet for exactly 7 seconds. Khalil counts them. "They'll file," Dorian says. "They'll file a counterclaim before 72 hours. "Probably," Khalil says. "How do you know?" Remington asks. Dorian turns his face toward him. "Because that's what my mother would do. Move before the window closes. Strike in the legal space before anyone moves in the physical one." A pause. "She understood your world, didn't she? Better than you knew." Remington's jaw shifts. "She understood it because she studied it," Dorian says. "She didn't just clean your floors. She was paying attention." Nobody speaks for a moment. Outside, the city is behind them now. Trees on either side of the highway. Exit signs with town names that mean nothing to anyone in this car. The sky is the color of something about to change. Dorian's phone buzzes again. Different pattern this time. 3 long pulses. He has never received that pattern before. It's not a pattern his mother programmed. It's not in any contact in his phone. The number is not one he recognizes. He holds it for a moment, doesn't answer. Shows the screen to Khalil. Khalil looks at the number. His expression does not change, but the quality of his stillness shifts. He takes the phone, shows it to Remington, then forward to Zayden. Zayden looks at it for 3 full seconds. Then he says something in a voice that is very quiet and very controlled. "That number is one of ours." Remington says, which means someone on our side of this knows we're in a car right now. With Dorian, Khalil says. With Dorian, Xaden confirms, and the highway stretches out ahead of them, straight and clear, and leading directly to a woman who has been hiding in Connecticut for years, who knows more than she has said, who built a system of protection so precise that even the people she was hiding her son from helped fund it. And somewhere, in a network that should be locked down, someone just sent a signal to a child's phone to confirm exactly where they're all going. Xaden tells the driver to change the route. Not a small change. He doesn't say, take the back roads or avoid the highway. He says, new destination, I'll give it to you in increments. Don't ask me why. The driver, who has been with them for 6 years and understands that this particular instruction pattern means something serious, nods once and keeps his face forward. Remington is already disassembling Dorian's phone. Not aggressively, methodically. He hands Dorian back the empty shell of it and holds the SIM card between 2 fingers, examining it the way a surgeon examines something removed from a body, looking for what was done to it and when. It's clean, he says. The number reached you through the carrier, not through the device. He looks at Xaden. They have his carrier information, which is registered under Amelia's name, Dorian says. They both look at him. She pays the bill, Dorian says. She set up the account. It's in her name or one of her names. His voice is steady, which means whoever this is has access to something connected to her. The car is quiet. Mom's cover is blown, he says simply, because the math leads there, and pretending it doesn't won't make it not true. Xaden's hand is on his own phone. He's not calling her yet. He's thinking. Dorian can tell by the quality of the silence in the front seat, the particular density of a man running scenarios, testing outcomes, looking for the one that doesn't break everything. If we call her now, Remington says quietly to Xaden, and the line is compromised, we lead them straight to her. Yes. If we don't call her, she doesn't know to move. She might already know, Khalil says. She moved to Connecticut because something changed on her end. She said there were things to handle. She knew before we did that this day was arriving. She's been preparing, Dorian says. She does that. She prepares for things she doesn't tell me about, and then the thing arrives, and she's already 3 steps ahead of it. Remington looks at him. Has she always done that? For as long as I can remember. Dorian shifts slightly. When I was 12, she changed all our locks, started varying our daily routes, and made me memorize 3 different addresses in 3 different boroughs without explaining why. 2 weeks later, she sat me down and said we were going to practice navigating by transit without phones, in case we ever needed to. A pause. I thought she was being careful. She was rehearsing. Khalil leans forward slightly. Dorian, the Connecticut property. She described it to you. Yes. What exactly did she tell you? He thinks back. The details she gave were specific, but delivered casually, the way she delivered most of the things that turned out to matter most. Not as a lesson, not with gravity, just wrapped inside an ordinary conversation on an ordinary evening. Cedar smell. Kitchen with a loose tile near the stove. A wall by the light switch that has a special kind of memory. He's held those details the way you hold directions you're not sure you'll need. She said the wall near the light switch had a special kind of memory, he says. I thought she was being poetic. She speaks like that sometimes. Khalil and Remington exchange a look over his head. It's not poetry, Remington says. What is it? Remington glances at Xaden. Xaden turns in the seat. He looks at Dorian with the expression of a man who has decided that this boy, who has sat in the back of this car and processed more in the last 90 minutes than most adults process in a year without falling apart, deserves the full count. Braille, Xaden says. She pressed markings into the wall beside the light switch. Something she wrote. Something she wanted found. A pause. By you. When the time came. The car is completely quiet. Dorian stares, not at anything the way he always stares, but there is something in the blankness of his gaze that is full to the edges with something that doesn't have a clean name. She knew I'd end up there, he says. She planned for it. She planned for this, for all of this. His hands are in his lap, completely still. The whole time, while I was going to school and eating in the cafeteria and thinking my biggest problem was whether the vending machine on the 3rd floor still worked, she was doing this. Nobody argues. She could have told me. The sentence is quiet, almost level. Almost. I'm not 9 years old. She could have told me something. She was trying to protect you, Khalil says. I know. Dorian breathes in, out. I know that, and I understand it. I do. A beat. It's still a lot to hold. Khalil's hand on the seat between them doesn't move, but it doesn't move closer either. He's reading the room the way a careful person reads a room, checking whether the closeness would land as comfort or intrusion. Dorian's hand, after a moment, moves, finds the edge of the seat, finds Khalil's, doesn't grip, just rests. Contact. Khalil doesn't say anything, just keeps his hand there. In the front seat, Zayden's jaw shifts almost imperceptibly. He turns back to the front. They drive for 20 minutes. Zayden feeds the driver coordinates in pieces. A gas station exit, then a county road, then a route that technically loops back on itself twice before straightening toward their actual destination. Surveillance countermeasure. Basic. But if someone was hoping to intercept based on the route rather than the destination, it cost them time. They stop once, a diner parking lot in a town whose name Dorian doesn't catch, to switch vehicles. There's a grey sedan parked in the far corner, keys above the visor. Trevon knows it's there because Trevon has 3 contingency vehicles pre-positioned within a 40-mile radius of Manhattan at any given time. This is not because the Voss brothers are paranoid. This is because the Voss brothers are experienced. They don't eat, though Khalil, getting out of the first car, looks at the diner for a second. Remington notices. Later. I know. They move to the grey car. Dorian navigates the parking lot with his cane, oriented by the sound of footsteps ahead and the placement of Khalil's voice, and doesn't need guidance. He finds the rear door of the grey car before anyone reaches it to open it for him. Back on the road. Quieter road. Trees thicker on both sides. The traitor, Dorian says. He has been sitting on this, organizing it. They're inside. They have access to your systems. They knew your timeline this morning, and they knew the carrier account. He pauses. But they didn't know the Connecticut property. Remington turns to look at him. If they'd known the property, Dorian says, they wouldn't have needed to track the phone. They'd have already been there. A pause. That information is insulated from whoever is leaking, which means wherever she stored that, it's in a channel they can't reach. Zayden says slowly, Khalil, the property purchase. Handled in a separate entity, Khalil says. Different council, different registration chain. I isolated it specifically so it couldn't be traced back through the main operation. How many people know the address? 3 people helped me structure the purchase. One of them retired to Florida 2 years ago. One of them is in this car. He pauses. One of them is the firm's senior property attorney. His name is Marcus Webb. He's been with us for 8 years. Marcus Webb, Remington says. I know, Khalil says. I know. We need to know if Webb's been approached, Zayden says. If he has been approached and hasn't told us, then we have a much larger problem than a signal on a phone. Trayvon, in the front passenger seat of the grey car, turns. "I can have someone at Webb's office in under an hour." "Send them," Zayden says. Trevon makes the call. The trees get thicker. The sky is lower now, grey pressing down on the highway. Dorian is tracking sounds. The change in road surface, the density of sounds from outside, the way wind hits the car differently when you're in open space versus surrounded by growth. He is building a picture of where he is that has nothing to do with sight. "Zayden," he says. "Yes?" "If they file the counterclaim within 72 hours, like Khalil said, what happens to my mother?" Zayden is quiet for a moment. "She's the primary witness to the conditions of my birth," Dorian says, "which means she's the most important person in the arbitration." "Yes." "Which makes her a target, not just for watching, for stopping." The word stopping sits in the car, and everyone hears it for what it means. "We're not going to let that happen," Zayden says. "I'm not asking for reassurance," Dorian says. "I'm asking what your actual plan is." A beat. "We get to her before they realize the phone trace didn't work," Remington says. "We move her out of the Connecticut property before it can be compromised. We put her in a location that doesn't exist anywhere in any system any of us has ever touched." "And the arbitration?" "If it goes to arbitration," Khalil says, "we don't need her there in person. We need documentation. We need a record that predates any challenge. We need—" He stops. "What?" Dorian says. "We need the original contract," Khalil says slowly. "The Dragan's founding agreement with your grandfather. The physical document. Our copies are digital. If they challenge those, which they will, we need the original. Signed, witnessed, dated." "Where is it?" Silence. "Where is it?" Dorian asks again. And this time, the silence is not the silence of people calculating. It is the silence of people who just realized something they should have realized an hour ago. Remington says it first, very quietly. "Amelia's wall." Dorian's head comes up slowly. "The Braille message," Khalil says. "She didn't write it so you'd find your way to her." "She wrote it," Zayden says, "so you'd find the document." The car hits a turn. The road narrows. The GPS, which Zayden has kept on a separate, isolated device since they switched vehicles, shows the Connecticut state line 3 miles ahead. And Dorian is very, very still, because his mother, blind, careful, quiet Amelia, who changes her walking routes and triple locks every door, has been holding the original copy of a 40-year-old contract in a wall of a farmhouse in Connecticut, pressed into plaster in a language only her son can read without tools, waiting for the day her son would need it. She did not give it to the Voss brothers. She did not file it with a lawyer. She gave it to Dorian, in the only way she could give him something without anyone else being able to take it. His throat tightens. He breathes through it. "She trusted me with it," he says. The sentence barely makes sound. Nobody answers, because nobody needs to. The farmhouse is 4 minutes away, and as the grey car comes around the last bend before the long driveway, Trevon's phone goes off. He looks at it, looks at Zayden. "Marcus Webb's office," Trevon says. "It's been cleared out. He left this morning. His assistant says he took a personal leave, no return date." A beat. "And he made one international call this morning at 6:47, 41 seconds. Zayden says, "Who did he call?" Trevon says a name, and it is the same name as the man in the photograph at the school gate. The eldest son of Vasile Dragan already knows about the farmhouse. The driveway is a 1/4 mile of gravel through heavy trees, and the grey car barely makes it to the tree line before Zayden tells the driver to stop. "We walk from here," he says. They get out in silence. Cold air, the smell of cedar hits first. Sharp and real, exactly how Amelia described it, which means Dorian stops walking for exactly 1 second and just breathes it in like it means something. Because it does. Trevon and 2 others move ahead through the trees. Remington falls in beside Xaden, both of them scanning the property edge. The roofline visible through the last row of trees, 1 window on the ground floor with curtain drawn, a cold chimney, a side door that may or may not be the way in. Khalil stays at Dorian's shoulder. Not guiding him, he hasn't needed that, but close. The snow that fell 2 days ago is still on the ground out here, undisturbed at the edges of the path. But as they get closer, Trevon holds up a fist and everyone stops. He points. At the snow near the east wall. Tracks. 2 sets, both leading toward the side door. 1 set is small, walking toward the door. Emilia probably from earlier today. The other set is larger, heavier, and overlaps hers, coming from a different angle, from the tree line on the far side. Remington leans close to Xaden. 1 word. Recent. Xaden's jaw tightens. He signals Trevon, go left, stay quiet. He signals the second bodyguard, circle right. He and Remington move toward the front of the house. Khalil turns to Dorian. Stay here, he says quietly. No, Dorian says. Dorian? There's someone in there, Dorian says, and my mother is in there. I'm not standing in the trees. We don't know what we're walking into. I know. His voice doesn't waver. I'm still not standing in the trees. Khalil holds his position for 2 more seconds, looking at the farmhouse. Then he looks at Dorian. Stay at my shoulder, left side. Don't move ahead of me for any reason. Okay? I mean it. I know you mean it. They move. The side door is unlocked, not open, but the latch is pushed out the same way the service corridor door at Harrington was pushed. Someone who knew the mechanism from the inside. The same person, same approach. Which means this isn't a rush job. This was planned. This person has been here before, has studied the locks, has moved through this space before today. Xaden goes through first, then Remington, then Khalil and Dorian. The kitchen. It is cold in the way of a room that hasn't had heat running properly, but there is a smell underneath the cedar and the cold. Something recent. Tea. Someone made tea in the last 2 hours. Dorian steps inside, and his hand immediately goes to the wall to the left of the door. His fingers move along it, finding the light switch, moving past it, finding the section where the plaster feels slightly different from the surrounding wall. He reads it. 2 fingers, slow and deliberate. His face changes. She's upstairs, he says. Khalil is already looking at the ceiling. There is no sound from above. She's upstairs, Dorian says again. That's what she wrote, that if I ever got here and she was quiet, she'd be upstairs. Remington is at the bottom of the staircase. He looks up. 17 steps, a turn at the top, a hallway he can't see the end of. He starts up. The boards creak under his weight in a way that he can't avoid, which is frustrating. Any element of surprise evaporates, but there's no help for it. Xaden is right behind him. Khalil and Dorian are at the base of the stairs. Dorian's hand on the banister, head slightly tilted. Second step from the top, Remington stops. There is a voice from behind the door at the end of the hall. A man's voice. Low, even and patient, the way certain threats are patient. The voice of someone who is not in a hurry because he believes he has complete control of the room. Remington can't hear the words at this distance, but he can hear, underneath the man's voice, something else. Silence. Emilia's silence. Deliberate and unwavering, the specific quality of a woman who has decided not to give the person in front of her a single thing he wants. Not a sound, not a flinch, not a syllable, and is holding that position the way a wall holds against pressure. Remington looks back at Xaden. Xaden nods once. They move down the hall. Xaden is the one who opens the door. He does it the way he does everything that matters, without announcement, without warning, just presence, the full weight of it arriving before anyone in the room has time to react to it. The room is small, a bedroom, one window, curtain drawn, a chair against the far wall, a lamp on the table beside the bed, casting yellow light. And in the chair, straight-backed, hands folded in her lap, dark glasses exactly level, Amelia Whitfield. She is wearing a grey sweater and her hair is up, and she looks the way she always looks when she is under maximum pressure, which is to say, entirely composed. Like pressure is a language, she speaks more fluently than most people speak their native tongue. The man standing near the window turns. He is exactly the man from the photograph. Heavy jaw, scar along the chin, dark jacket, the particular physical confidence of someone who carries authority as a physical object. 40-something, expensive shoes, a phone in his left hand. He looks at Xaden, then at Remington, then at Khalil, and behind him, Dorian in the doorway. His expression shifts when he sees Dorian. It's fast. A professional would miss it. But Remington, who has been reading faces professionally for 20 years, catches it. Not surprise, not fear, recognition. And underneath the recognition, something that recalculates fast. Like a man who came here for one thing and just realized there is something considerably more valuable in the room than he planned for. Dragan, Xaden says. The man tilts his head. Xaden Voss. He looks at each brother in turn. All three of you. A pause. In person. I've been waiting for this. Leave, Xaden says. I came for a conversation. You came to intimidate a woman alone in a house, Remington says, which tells me everything I need to know about what you are. The conversation ends here. Dragon's eyes move back to Dorian. He doesn't look away. He's everything they said. The hair, the glasses. A pause. The cane. His voice is measured, factual. Like he's confirming items on a list. The heir the Voss line never supposed to have. Dorian doesn't move, doesn't react. You should leave, Amelia says. Her voice comes out of the composed stillness of her posture. Clear, unhurried, the voice of someone who said what she meant and means to have it land. Dragan looks at her. We were having a productive conversation, Amelia. No, she says. You were talking. I was waiting for my family to arrive. The word family moves through the room. Dragan looks at Xaden again. His phone is still in his hand. The counterclaim will be filed by 6 this evening. Your documentation, the genetic record, the legal filing, will enter arbitration. You know what that means for your Eastern operations. He pauses. This doesn't have to become what it can become. There's still a version of this conversation where everyone walks away with something. There's no version of that conversation, Xaden says. You haven't heard what I'm offering. I don't need to. He steps further into the room. Because what you have to offer is based on a premise that you have leverage. You don't have leverage. What you had was a 40-year-old contract, an empty bloodline, and patience. We've removed 2 of those 3 things. He stops in the center of the room. File whatever you want. It won't change what it can't change. Dragan looks at Dorian one more time. Long. Then he looks at Amelia. You built something difficult, he says to her. I want you to know that. We've been looking for him for 4 years, and we didn't find him. You were thorough. A beat. Your mother was thorough, he says, directing it toward Dorian now, like a fact being filed for later use. Unfortunately, the things most worth protecting are always found eventually. He moves toward the door. The 3 brothers do not step aside. There is a beat, a weighted, specific beat in which the room calculates. Then Xaden moves to one side. Just enough. Not deference, control. The decision to allow someone to exit is different from being unable to stop them, and every person in the room knows which one this is. Dragan walks between them. At the door, he stops, without turning. 72 hours, Xaden. Think about what you want the outcome to look like. He leaves. His footsteps go down the stairs, unhurried, and the side door opens and closes. Then the room breathes. Emilia is out of the chair before any of them can reach her. Not towards Xaden or Khalil or Remington. She crosses the room and she stops directly in front of where she knows Dorian is standing. She has always known exactly where Dorian is standing, and she puts both hands on either side of his face. He covers her hands with his. Neither of them says anything. The three brothers look away, all at the same time in different directions. The window, the floor, the ceiling, the particular movements of people who are respecting a moment that has nothing to do with them, and everything to do with 16 years. Then Dorian says, into the silence, "I read your wall." "Good," she says. "You planned all of this." "Not all of it," she says. "Just the parts I could see coming." "Did you know it would be today?" "I knew it would be soon." "Did you know it would be all three of them?" A pause. "Yes," she says. "I always knew it would be all three." Something in her voice on that sentence is different. Older, heavier, carrying a weight that has nothing to do with today and everything to do with the years before it. Xaden hears it. He turns back from the window. "Emilia?" he says. She looks toward his voice. Her hands drop from Dorian's face. She straightens. "There's something else," Xaden says, not a question. "There's always something else," she says. "The contract, the original document." She is quiet for exactly 2 seconds. Then, "Yes." "Is it here?" "Yes." "Dragon was here before us. Did he find it?" The silence that follows is the longest in a day that has been full of long silences. And then Emilia says, "No." She pauses. "But he wasn't looking for the document," she says. "He was looking for something else." Xaden's eyes narrow. "What?" She turns her face toward Dorian again. Something moves through her expression. Not regret, not apology, but the specific look of a woman who has been carrying a secret for 16 years and is about to put it down. "There are 2 documents," she says. "I've only told you about one of them." The room goes absolutely still. "The original Voss Dragon contract," she says, "and a second document, one that was never meant to exist, one that Vasile Dragan signed when he thought no one was watching." A beat. One that voids not just the inheritance claim, it voids the entire legal standing of the Dragan family in every jurisdiction they currently operate in. Xaden stares at her. "You've had it," he says slowly, "this whole time." "I found it in the study," she says, "the night I found the first one, the same file, misfiled." A pause. "I took both." And the weight of what she just said, 16 years, 2 documents, one woman who cleaned their floors and said nothing, and built the quietest fortress in the history of quiet fortresses, lands in the room and changes the shape of everything. Khalil says, almost to himself, "You didn't run from us." "No," she says, "you ran toward the end game." "I ran toward my son having a future that no one could take from him," she says. "Yes." Remington makes a sound, not a word, the specific sound of a man who has spent 20 years believing he understood what careful meant and just discovered he was an amateur. Dorian reaches for his mother's hand, finds it, holds it. "Where are the documents?" Xaden asks. Emilia turns toward her son. "In the wall," she says. And Dorian, who already read the message, who has already counted the words, who already knows the second half of the instructions that the braille contains, the half that comes after, "I'll be upstairs," nods. "I know," he says. "I've got it." The document is inside the wall, not stored there recently, pressed there years ago, the way you press something into a place you trust more than any safe or lock or person, because walls don't talk, and walls don't negotiate, and walls don't pick up phones at 6:47 in the morning and make 41-second calls to the wrong family. Dorian crosses to the kitchen without being directed. His cane finds the doorframe, clears it, and he moves to the wall beside the light switch, the same section he read when they first came in, and his fingers go lower this time, past the message, past the instructions, to a seam in the plaster that is not a crack. It is a cut, precise, made with something thin and sharp by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. He presses at the seam's lower edge. A section of plaster, roughly the size of a paperback book, secured on a concealed hinge, swings inward. Behind it, a waterproof sleeve. Inside the sleeve, 2 folded documents and a third item, a small brass key on a short chain, the kind that opens a safety deposit box rather than a door. Dorian runs his fingers over the folded documents. He cannot read them the way they are. They're standard print, not braille, but he can feel their weight and age. The paper of the first one is stiffer, older, the kind of paper that has spent decades being what it is and knows it. The second one is slightly newer, but still carries the gravity of something that was signed with intention. He holds them out. Xaden takes them. He unfolds the first document, reads. His expression is carefully controlled. Dorian has learned that Xaden's control is most visible when something is hitting hardest, because the harder it hits, the stiller his face becomes, like he's using every available resource to process, and there's nothing left over for expression. He passes it to Remington without a word. Remington reads. His jaw shifts once. He passes it to Khalil. Khalil reads it more slowly than either of his brothers. He's the one who checks dates, subclauses, witness signatures, the specific legal language that makes a document either airtight or full of gaps the size of a courtroom. When he finishes, he folds it back and looks at Amelia. "This is the original," he says, "signed by Vasile Dragan Sr. and your grandfather Xaden, Wilsoned by 2 names I recognize." He pauses. "This is real." Xaden unfolds the second document. This one he reads slower, twice through. His stillness, which was already considerable, becomes the kind of stillness that occupies a room physically, takes up space. "What is it?" Remington asks. Xaden looks up from the document. He looks at Amelia. "How did he not know you had this?" "He never knew it existed," she says. "It was in a file he inherited from his father. I don't think he knew his father had signed it. It was buried 20 pages into a property acquisition agreement that nobody had looked at in 30 years. She pauses. "I almost missed it myself." "But you didn't." "No." Khalil leans over and reads over Xaden's shoulder. His eyes move down the page, stop at the bottom. "The signature is Vasile Dragan Sr., he says, "witnessed and notarized. This predates the first document by 7 years." "What does it say?" Dorian asks from across the kitchen. Khalil looks at him. "It's a liability waiver attached to a weapons procurement arrangement. In jurisdictions where that arrangement was illegal, which is every jurisdiction where the Dragan family currently operates, this document constitutes documented proof of participation in criminal trade." A beat. Not alleged, documented, signed and witnessed. Another beat. It also lists 4 individuals by name as co-signatories. 3 of those 4 individuals currently hold government positions in the Eastern European bloc. The kitchen is quiet. "If this document reaches the right desk," Khalil says, "it doesn't just void the contract. It triggers an international investigation that pulls in 4 governments, 2 decades of financial activity, and every legal operation the Dragon family has built on top of the criminal foundation beneath it. Dorian is very still. "My mother found this in your study." "Yes," Xaden says, "and she kept it safe for 16 years. "Yes." "Without telling you it existed?" Silence. "She didn't tell you because she knew what you would do with it," Dorian says. Not accusatory, just reading the room, reading the people in it. "You would have moved on it immediately, filed it, used it, and the moment you did, anyone who knew it existed would have come for her." Xaden says nothing. "She needed to wait until the timing was right," Dorian says. "Until there was a moment where using it was protection instead of escalation." He pauses. "Until now." The 72-hour clock is running. The Dragan counterclaim will hit the arbitration system by 6 tonight. The moment it does, both documents become the most important pieces of paper in a legal dispute that will determine the future of 2 family empires. And Cosmin Dragon, who was standing in this room an hour ago, does not yet know that the second document exists. But he will. Because Xaden looks at Remington, and Remington looks at Khalil, and the decision moves between them the way decisions always move between them. No vote, no discussion, just the compressed communication of 3 people who have been in the same rooms through the worst and best moments of 20 years. "We file tonight," Xaden says. "Both documents, before the counterclaim." Khalil is already on his phone. "I need a different attorney. Webb is burned." "Tanisha Crawford," Remington says. He says it immediately, which means he has been holding that name in reserve for exactly this kind of situation. She's independent, she's federal level, and she's been hostile to the Dragan family's legal team in 2 prior cases. "She'll move tonight?" "For this?" Remington looks at the document in Xaden's hand. "She'll move in an hour." Khalil dials. Emilia, who has been standing near the doorway of the kitchen, reaches out and finds the edge of the counter. She is steady. She is always steady. But she is also holding herself the way a person holds themselves after a very long time of holding everything alone, and the effort of it is visible, in a way it probably wouldn't be to someone who doesn't know how to look for it. Dorian moves to her side. No instruction, no cue. He just goes. He doesn't say anything. He stands at her shoulder, exactly the way Khalil has been standing at his shoulder all day, and the geometry of it is not lost on anyone in the room. Remington watches this from the doorway. He looks away before the feeling that crosses his face has time to become legible. He goes to the window instead, checking the tree line, running surveillance the way he runs it when everything else is moving too fast, and the window is the one thing he can control. That is when he sees the headlights. Not on the driveway, on the old service road that runs along the north side of the property. A road that doesn't appear on consumer mapping applications, a road that would only be known to someone with a detailed physical survey of the land. "We have company," he says. Flat, factual. 2 vehicles, North Service Road. Khalil ends his call mid-sentence. Trevon materializes in the kitchen doorway from wherever he was. He has a specific gift for being exactly where he needs to be, and his expression, still singular and unreadable, is doing that rare thing again. "How many?" Xaden asks. 2 vehicles, minimum 4 individuals per vehicle, Remington says. "Moving slow. They're not rushing. They think we don't know they're there." "They don't know we saw them," Khalil says. "Which gives us a window," Xaden says. He looks at Trevon. "The east side of the property." "Clear," Trevon says. "We had eyes on it when we came in." Xaden turns to Emilia. "Can you move?" "I've been ready to move for 9 years," she says. There is a fraction of a second, barely a breath, where all 3 brothers register that sentence and what it cost her to live inside it. Then they move. Dorian takes his mother's arm. Not guiding her. She doesn't need guiding, he knows that, but they have a specific physical language between them. Her hand inside his elbow, moving as one unit the way they have moved through every unfamiliar space since he was old enough to walk beside her. And they follow Trayvon through the kitchen's back door and into the cold of the property's eastern edge. The trees are dense here. The ground is soft and uneven with frost. Dorian's cane moves across it efficiently. He adjusts the angle based on sound, the way ice shifts differently from mud, the way soft ground absorbs the tap differently from hard. He makes no misstep. Behind them, the farmhouse sits quiet and lit and occupied looking, which is intentional. Remington stayed inside. Zayden, walking beside Khalil at the tree line, looks back once at the yellow window light. The headlights on the north road are still moving slow. The people in those vehicles think they are approaching a house with 6 targets inside. They are taking their time because they believe they have every advantage. They are about to discover they have none. Zayden's phone buzzes. A text from Remington. I'm set. They're 90 seconds from the north entrance. Go. They go. Through the trees, through the cold, through the specific darkness of a property that Amelia chose, partly because it has no neighbours within half a mile in any direction, and the nearest road is a 20-minute walk. Trevon has a vehicle staged on the east access path. A third contingency, because Trevon runs contingencies the way other people run errands. As they reach the vehicle, Dorian's phone, reassembled, SIM replaced with a clean one Khalil had in his jacket, buzzes with an incoming call. Unknown number, different from before. Khalil looks at it. Don't answer. It's not the same number, Dorian says. I know. Then how do you know not to answer? Because the only people who have this new number, Khalil says, are standing in this tree line, and none of us are calling you. Dorian does not answer. The vehicle moves out through the east path, lights off for the first quarter mile, navigating by Trayvon's knowledge of the road rather than by sight. Behind them, through the trees, no sound yet. Whatever is happening at the farmhouse's north entrance is happening quietly, which means Remington is doing what Remington does, which is make large problems very small, very efficiently. Amelia is in the back seat. Her hands are folded in her lap. Her face is forward. Are you okay? Dorian asks her. Yes. He was there a long time before we arrived. About 90 minutes, she says. He didn't hurt you? No. A pause. He wanted to. He wanted to threaten me into telling him where the documents were. But he needed me functional for the arbitration, which is the only reason he kept the conversation professional. She says professional the way some people say a word they find faintly ridiculous. What did he say to you? He told me that my son's future could be very comfortable, she says, or very difficult, depending on the choices I made in the next 72 hours. The car is quiet. What did you tell him? Dorian asks. I told him I didn't have a son who needed other people's comfort to have a future, she says. I told him my son was going to be fine, regardless of what anyone decided in any room he wasn't invited into. Zayden, in the front seat, looks out the window at the passing trees. Khalil, beside Dorian, says nothing, but his expression does something that is not quite a smile and not quite not. And Dorian, who has had the longest, most world-altering day of his 16 years, sits back in the car seat with his cane between his knees and his mother beside him, and 3 men he met this morning surrounding him like walls that decided to be people, and he breathes. Just once. Deep. Like something that has been tight all day, just found enough room to let go. But Remington's phone, synced to Zayden's, shows one message. 3 words. They brought a lawyer, and the words land in the moving car like a stone through ice. Because you bring a lawyer to serve papers, and you serve papers to begin a legal process, and a legal process beginning tonight means the 72-hour window just got shorter. Tanisha Crawford picks up on the second ring. It is 4:17 in the afternoon. She is in her Manhattan office, and she has been half expecting this call for 3 years. Not from the Voss brothers specifically, but from the category of case that only arrives when several impossible things align at once, and someone needs a lawyer who has the particular combination of clearance, nerve, and legal aggression to move in a window that most people would say is already closed. Khalil gives her the summary in 4 minutes. She asks 2 questions, both precise, both about the documents, authentication procedure and chain of custody. Then she says, "Send me a photograph of both documents to the encrypted address. I need them reviewed within the hour. If they authenticate, I can file a preemptive disclosure with the Federal Arbitration Board before 6. That blocks the counterclaim from entering the standard process and routes it into a federal oversight framework where the Dragan family's connections in the state courts mean exactly nothing." Khalil says, "You understand what the second document contains." "I understood what it contained from your description," she says. "Which is why you need to get me those photographs in the next 15 minutes, not 20, 15. She hangs up. Khalil photographs both documents in the moving vehicle. Clean, high resolution, all 4 corners visible, and sends them to an address that looks like a random string of characters and is anything but. Then they wait. The vehicle reaches a secondary location, a hotel in Hartford, booked under a name that connects to nothing, and they move inside. A suite on the 6th floor. Clean lines, anonymous furniture, a particular blank quality of spaces designed to be occupied briefly and remembered not at all. Amelia sits in the chair by the window. Dorian sits on the edge of the bed closest to her. Remington arrives 20 minutes after they do. He comes through the door in the way he always comes through doors, which is to say, already knowing exactly what the room looks like before he enters it, already positioned for whatever the room might require. He has a split across his left knuckles, fresh cleaned. Nobody asks. "The lawyer they brought," Zayden says, "couldn't serve what he came to serve," Remington says. "He needed a verified address and a named recipient. The house was empty by the time they got inside." He pauses. "They know we had the documents. They don't know if we still have them or where we are." "They'll know soon enough," Khalil says. "The moment Crawford files, the system notifies all parties." "How long from filing to notification?" 90 minutes. Zayden checks his watch. 4:41. "She needs to file by 5, he says. She knows. The room is quiet. Outside the window, Hartford does what medium-sized cities do in the late afternoon. Traffic, lights changing, people who have ordinary problems moving through ordinary hours, without any knowledge that 6 floors up, 2 documents and 1 blind woman and 1 16-year-old boy are sitting at the center of something that is about to rearrange the legal architecture of 3 continents. Dorian is sitting with the brass key in his hand, the one that was in the waterproof sleeve with the documents. He's been turning it over since they got to the hotel, feeling its weight, the specific shape of its teeth. "What does this key open?" he asks. Nobody answers immediately. He holds it toward Amelia. "Mom!" She turns her face toward him. "You put it there with the documents," he says. "It's not part of either document. It's separate, which means it opens something else." Amelia is quiet for exactly the length of time it takes to decide. "A safety deposit box," she says, "at a bank in Lower Manhattan. Box registered in your name, your full name, the one I gave you, not the one she carried." "My full name," he says slowly. "The one you never told me." "Dorian Marcus Voss Whitfield," she says. "That's your full legal name. I registered it at birth and sealed it until you were old enough for it not to be a liability." A pause. "It's yours now." The 3 brothers across the room receive this quietly. Zayden sits down, first time he's sat since they left the farmhouse. Khalil turns toward the window. Remington looks at the ceiling. 3 men hearing their last name come out of a 16-year-old boy's identity in real time. "The safety deposit box," Dorian says, keeping his voice steady. "What's in it?" "Documentation," Amelia says. "Medical records, birth record, and a letter." She pauses. "One for you, and one for each of them." The room stays quiet. Zayden says, after a moment, "You wrote us letters." "I wrote them 8 years ago," she says, "when Dorian was 8, and I was certain the day would eventually come. I didn't know when, I didn't know how, but I knew there would be a day when explanations would be required, and I wanted to give them properly." She folds her hands. "Not in a hotel room in Hartford, with a legal deadline in 18 minutes. Khalil makes a sound, not quite a laugh, something with more in it than a laugh. 18 minutes, Zayden says. 17, Remington says. Khalil's phone rings, the room locks. He answers. Speaker. Tanisha Crawford's voice fills the suite, crisp and exact. Both documents are authenticated. Chain of custody is established through the property record and the birth registration. The second document, the liability waiver, has been cross-referenced with 3 existing federal case files. It is not just admissible, it is, and I want to be precise here, the single most significant piece of unsolicited evidence I have seen submitted to a federal arbitration process in 11 years of practice. Nobody speaks. "I'm filing in 4 minutes, she says. Once I do, the Dragon counterclaim enters the federal framework, not the state one. Their state court connections are irrelevant. The arbitration board will have a preliminary review order within 48 hours. And the second document, given its implications for the 4 named co-signatories, will be referred to the appropriate federal investigative division simultaneously." "What does that mean for our timeline?" Khalil asks. "It means the Dragan family has approximately 6 hours before their legal team realizes the ground shifted, and approximately 12 hours before it becomes public record." A breath. "It also means, Mr. Voss, that your son's legal standing as direct heir is not in question. It cannot be questioned. Not now, not with both documents on record." Another pause. "Congratulations. I say that in the most strictly professional sense." She ends the call. The room processes. Dorian is sitting with the key still in his hand. His face is forward. His jaw is set with the same angle his mother's jaw sets at, the same angle Zayden's jaw sets at, the geometry of a family written into bone in a way that years and distance and deliberate invisibility couldn't erase. "It's over?" he asks. "The legal part," Khalil says. "The fallout is just beginning." "The fallout for them," Remington clarifies. "How bad?" Dorian asks. "For the Dragan family," Zayden says. "Everything they built in the last 40 years was built on top of what's in that second document. When that becomes public record, and it will, the infrastructure falls." He pauses. "It's not something they recover from." Dorian takes this in. He turns the key over one more time. Then he looks, not at the wall, not at the room, but with his chin angled slightly upward, the specific orientation he uses when he's directing a thought outward rather than inward. "She held that document for 16 years, he says. "She could have used it at any point. She could have ended this years ago." "Yes," Zayden says, "but she waited." "She waited until you were old enough," Amelia says quietly, "to be part of the moment it was used. So it would be yours too, not just mine." The room is fully quiet. Outside, the city hums. The light is going gold through the curtains. Somewhere below, traffic is making the particular late afternoon sound of people heading home. And in a 6th-floor hotel suite in Hartford, a boy who started the day thinking about turkey sandwiches holds a brass key in his hand and sits inside the largest silence of his life. Not empty silence, not uncomfortable silence, but the kind that follows when something true and enormous has just been said, and the room needs a moment to hold it properly. Then Remington's phone buzzes. He reads it, looks at Zayden. "Cosmin Dragon just left Manhattan," he says. "Private airfield. Flight plan filed to Bucharest." "He's running," Khalil says. "He's running," Remington confirms. Zayden looks at the window. Something passes through his face. Not satisfaction, not triumph. Something more tired and more real than either of those things. "Let him run," he says quietly. "The paperwork will find him." And then, from the chair by the window, Amelia says, very quietly, to no one and everyone, "It's done." Not celebrating, not releasing, just naming it, the way you name something you've been carrying so long that the moment it's over, the first thing you need to do is say the word aloud so your body believes it. Dorian reaches over and covers her hand with his. She holds on. The call comes at 11:14 at night. Zayden is awake. He hasn't slept. None of them have slept. They don't sleep on nights like this. Standing at the window of the hotel suite with a cup of cold coffee, looking at nothing in particular, running the post-filing situation the way he runs everything, forward and backward and sideways, looking for the angle he missed. The number on his phone is one he recognizes immediately. He stares at it for 3 full seconds. Then he answers. "Vasile," he says. The voice on the other end is older than its son's, quieter, the particular quiet of someone who has never needed volume to be heard. "Zayden?" A pause. "I understand we have a situation." "You had a situation," Zayden says, past tense. "Crawford filed 4 hours ago." "I know." A breath. "I've been speaking with my attorneys for the last 3 hours." Another pause. "I want to speak with you directly, without lawyers, without intermediaries." "We're past that." "We're not past anything," Vasile Dragon says, and the precision of it, not a threat, not a plea, just a flat assessment, is the most unsettling thing Zayden has heard all day. "My son acted without my instruction this morning. I want you to know that." Zayden says nothing. "The woman," Vasile says. "Emilia. What was done to her today was not authorized by me. Your son stood in a room with her for 90 minutes. I know. I'm telling you it was not authorized." "That doesn't change what it was." A silence. Then, "No, it doesn't." He sounds old. Not weak. Old in the specific way of someone who has lived inside a long game and is calculating whether the game is still worth playing. "The document my father signed. I knew it existed. I didn't know where it was. And now it's in federal hands." "Yes." A pause. "Which means the next 36 hours are going to be very difficult for 4 people who deserve the difficulty, and 1 family, mine, who built its legitimate operations, honestly, and does not deserve to lose them because of what my father signed in 1983. Zayden turns from the window. Remington is watching him from across the room. Halil has appeared in the doorway of the adjoining room, silent, listening. "What do you want?" Zayden says. "A conversation," Vasile says. "In person, tomorrow morning. You, your brothers, and the boy." A pause. "And Amelia, if she chooses." "I don't bring 16-year-olds to negotiations." "He's not 16 years old in the way you mean," Vasile says. "You've spent 1 day with him. I've been watching him for 4 years. You know already what I mean." Zayden does not respond immediately, because the man is right. And being right about Dorian, being able to see it from 4 years of observation, while Zayden needed 1 afternoon, is a complicated thing to sit with. "Where?" Zayden asks. "Neutral ground. I'll send you the address." "You'll send it to my attorney and she'll vet it." "Of course." A pause. "Zayden, my son acted rashly. I'm asking for a conversation before the federal investigators decide there's nothing left to talk about. That's all. He ends the call. The room reconfigures. Zayden turns. Remington already has his assessment face on, the one that processes information without the complication of feeling it until later. Khalil is leaning against the doorframe with his arms crossed. He's separating himself from Cosmin, Remington says. Publicly and legally, Khalil says. If the federal case moves forward, he wants a documented record of having reached out directly, having attempted resolution, having separated his conduct from his son's. He's protecting his legitimate operations, Zayden says. Yes, which means he's not fighting the filing, he's maneuvering around it. Which is either more dangerous or less dangerous than fighting it, Remington says, depending on what he brings to the meeting. They stand with this for a moment. Then, from down the hall, from the direction of the room where Dorian was, an hour ago, sitting against the headboard with a braille reader and a silence that was doing the work of processing everything that had happened in the last 16 hours, comes a voice. I want to go, Dorian says. He is standing in the hallway doorway, silver hair, dark glasses, the cane in his left hand. He looks entirely awake. You heard that call, Zayden says. The walls in this hotel are not as solid as they look. Khalil looks at Remington. Remington looks at Zayden. Dorian, Zayden starts. Vasile Dragan has been watching me for 4 years, Dorian says. He knows more about my daily life than you do. He sent his son to my school and his son to my mother's house and a lawyer to serve papers and a tracking signal to my phone. He pauses. He's done all of that, and I've never been in the same room with him. I'd like to change that. Another pause, and I think he specifically asked for me to be there because he already knows I'm not going to be kept in a hotel room while the adults handle things. Nobody argues, because there is no argument. Emilia, who has appeared at the far end of the hallway, who clearly also heard the call because Emilia hears everything, always, and the hotel walls are genuinely not that solid, says, He goes, I go. Emilia, Zayden says. He goes, I go, she repeats. That's not a negotiation. Zayden looks at her for a moment. Okay, he says. The morning comes the way mornings come after nights with no sleep. Grey first, then sharp, then real. The address Vasile's attorney sent is a private conference space in a midtown law firm. Neutral, yes, but also deliberately mundane. Not a house, not a warehouse, not anywhere that can be made to feel like a threat. Just an office. Glass table, coffee service, the particular studied ordinariness of a space designed to make difficult conversations feel manageable. They arrive first, because they always arrive first. Tanisha Crawford is there. Khalil called her at 7. She didn't complain. Sitting at the side of the table with 2 documents and a recording device that is entirely legal in this context and that Vasile's team will know about and not object to, because objecting to it would communicate something they can't afford to communicate. At 9:02, Vasile Dragan walks in. He is 71 years old and built like a man who was once large and has become more compressed rather than smaller. White hair, a suit that cost as much as a car, eyes the color of something worn down and reassembled. He walks with a slight heaviness on his right side, an old injury probably, or age, or both. He stops when he sees Dorian. He looks at the boy for a long moment. Not threateningly, not calculatingly, like he is confirming something he already believed and finding the confirmation more real than he expected. You look like your grandfather, he says. Not Zayden's grandfather. The older man says it with a specificity that means he is referring to the Voss lineage 2 generations back. A man he negotiated with, made agreements with, built a decades-long arrangement with. I've been told I look like my mother, Dorian says. You look like both, Vasile says. That happens sometimes. He moves to the table and sits. His legal team, 2 attorneys, take positions on either side. Xaden sits across from him. Remington and Khalil on either side. Dorian sits beside Khalil. Amelia sits beside Dorian. Basile looks at Amelia for a long moment. "You were thorough," he says. "You said that through your son," she says. "I heard." A pause. "I meant it." "I know." He looks at the table. "The document my father signed is in federal hands. Nothing I say today changes that. What I am here to discuss is the separation between that document's implications for my family's historical liabilities and the current, legally clean operations that employ 400 people and have nothing to do with 1983. Tanisha Crawford looks at him. "That's a matter for the federal review process." "I know," he says. "I'm not here to negotiate the review. I'm here to notify the Voss family formally, in a documented setting, that the contract," he gestures to the documents on the table, "the original agreement is withdrawn. Unilaterally, immediately, in writing if required." The room absorbs this. "The counterclaim," Khalil says. "Withdrawn," Vasile says. "As of this morning. My attorneys filed the withdrawal at 8:30. Tanisha checks her phone. She looks up, nods once. It's confirmed. The legal claim against Dorian's standing as heir is gone. The contract that started all of this, 40 years of a dead man's assumption that a bloodline would die out, is withdrawn. It is, in the most official and complete sense, over. And yet the room doesn't feel the way rooms feel when things are over. It feels the way rooms feel when the immediate crisis has resolved, but the larger, heavier, more human thing beneath it is still sitting at the table, unaddressed, waiting. Vasile Dragan looks at Dorian one more time. "I owe you nothing," he says. "And you owe me nothing. But I want to say, in this room, on record, that the choices your mother made to protect you were extraordinary, and that the boy she raised to sit at this table without flinching is more than the bloodline he carries." He pauses. "That's all." Dorian is quiet for a moment. Then he says, "The 400 people your legitimate operations employ, they didn't sign anything in 1983. Vasile looks at him. "The federal review is going to take time," Dorian says. "And during that time, 400 people are going to wonder whether they have jobs." He pauses. "I don't know what the right answer is. I'm 16. But I think it's worth someone asking the question out loud." He turns his face toward Tanisha Crawford. "Is there a mechanism for separating the federal liability from the operational entity?" Tanisha Crawford looks at this 16-year-old boy, then she picks up her pen. "Yes," she says, "there is. The safety deposit box is in a bank on Fulton Street in Lower Manhattan, and it takes them 2 days to get there. 2 days because Crawford's team needs 48 hours to process the withdrawal and confirm the federal referral is clean. 2 days because Amelia needs to be formally cleared as a witness to the birth documentation. 2 days because Dorian asks for them, not in those words, but by being quiet in a way that communicates he needs time that isn't about legal processes or threat assessments or the next move on any particular board. He needs 48 hours to just exist inside everything that happened. They give him that. On the second morning, he and Amelia are in the hotel room at 7. She is drinking tea. He is sitting on the floor with his back against the bed because he has always thought better when he's lower than the furniture. She knows this, has known it since he was 4 years old, and used to sit under the kitchen table to work through things, and she doesn't comment on it. "You're not afraid of them," she says. He considers this. "No." "You were, at the beginning." "I was uncertain," he says. "That's different from afraid." She drinks her tea. "You wrote them letters," he says. "Yes." 8 years ago. "Yes." "Why 8? Why not 10? Why not last year?" She is quiet for a moment. "Because when you were 8, you asked me why you didn't have a father. And I told you that some families are built differently, and that yours was built around love that was real, even if the shape of it was complicated. She pauses. And after I said it, you thought about it for a minute, and then you said, "Okay," and went back to whatever you were doing. And I went to the kitchen and sat down and wrote the letters, because I realized that if you could carry that answer with that kind of calm at 8 years old, then the people who needed to know you existed needed to be told properly. Dorian turns this over, files it. "The key," he says. "Today." "Today," she confirms. They arrive at the bank at 10 in the morning, all 5 of them. The security deposit room is small, a low ceiling, fluorescent light, the smell of recirculated air, and whatever metal is in the walls. A bank employee unseals the box and leaves. Dorian opens it. Inside, a manila envelope, sealed with tape that has yellowed at the edges. A medical record folder, thin. A folded birth certificate. Not the standard one, the original, the one with the full name on it. Dorian Marcus Voss Whitfield, stamped and sealed. And 4 smaller envelopes, one with Dorian's name written in Amelia's precise handwriting, 3 with names that make Remington look at the ceiling and Khalil look at the table, and Zayden look at the wall the way men look at surfaces when they need a moment they can't ask for. Zayden, Khalil, Remington. Each in the same handwriting, each sealed. Dorian picks up his envelope first, runs his fingers across his name. Then he puts it in his jacket pocket. He picks up Zayden's and holds it out toward him. Zayden takes it. Khalil takes his. Remington takes his. Nobody opens them here. Nobody proposes to. The room is too small, and the moment is too large, and there are things that need to be read in private, alone, with enough space around them to receive properly what a woman built into words across 8 years. They leave the bank. On the sidewalk outside, the city is doing what New York does on a weekday morning. Enormous, indifferent, moving at its own pace for its own reasons. Taxis, voices, someone selling coffee from a cart, the specific smell of a city that runs on ambition and steam heat, and the compressed pressure of too many people trying to build too many things in too small a space. Dorian stands on the sidewalk for a moment. He turns his face upward. Not at the sky, he can't see the sky, but toward the sound of it, the open-air quality of space above him after 2 days in rooms, and he breathes it in. "What happens now?" he asks, not to anyone specifically. "That's mostly up to you," Khalil says. "I go back to school. If you want. I have a French history test on Thursday." Remington, who has said almost nothing for the last 20 minutes, says, "The French Revolution." "Yes." "We could tutor you." Dorian turns his face toward Remington's voice. A beat. "Do you know the French Revolution?" "I know how empires collapse," Remington says. "Close enough." It is the driest thing he has said in 2 days, and it is also completely accurate, and Dorian laughs. A real laugh, short and sharp, surprised out of him. The laugh of someone who has spent 48 hours carrying something very heavy and just found a moment of relief that arrived from an unexpected direction. Khalil makes a sound beside him that is quiet and warm. Zayden, for the first time in what feels like a week, exhales completely. Amelia is standing beside Dorian. She finds his arm. He finds her hand. "He said yes to tutoring," she says to no one in particular. "You should know he's been saying yes to things in his own time his whole life. Don't rush him." "We've noticed," Zayden says. "Good." She squeezes Dorian's arm. He also doesn't like to be called son by people he's known for less than a week. He'll let you know when that changes. 3 men absorb this. Dorian's expression does not confirm or deny, but the corner of his mouth moves. The safety deposit box's contents are in a bag in Khalil's hand. The letters are in 4 jacket pockets. The birth certificate with the full name on it, Dorian Marcus Voss Whitfield, is in the folder, official and sealed and permanent. It doesn't fix 16 years in an afternoon on a sidewalk. It doesn't convert strangers into family the way a legal document converts a claim into a fact. But it is a beginning, an honest one. The kind that doesn't ask anything to be pretended or rushed or collapsed into a single moment of resolution, that life doesn't actually operate that way. It is, in the most careful and real sense, a start. And Dorian, who learned from a woman who plans 17 years ahead to take things at the pace they actually need to go, knows the difference between a start and a finish. "Come on," he says, and he starts walking. 3 weeks later, on a Thursday morning, Dorian Whitfield walks into his French history class at Harrington Elite Academy. He gets a 91 on the test. He shows nobody. He folds the paper and puts it in his bag and does not mention it, because doing well on tests is not new for him and has never required an audience. But when he gets home that afternoon, to the Brooklyn apartment with the leaking radiator and the double-locked doors and the kitchen that smells like whatever his mother is cooking, which today is something with rosemary, he puts the folded test paper on the counter where she'll find it. She finds it 20 minutes later. She unfolds it, runs her fingers across the grade written in the teacher's pen. Then she says, without turning, 91. Yes. What did you miss? A date, 1793. I put 92. She makes a sound. You knew it was 93? I did. I second-guessed myself. Stop second-guessing yourself. I know. She folds the paper back and sets it on the counter. Then she turns and finds him in the kitchen, the way she always finds him, the particular orientation of a woman who has been navigating a shared space with her son for 16 years and knows precisely where he is at any given moment, sight or no sight. She cups his face in both hands, the way she did in the farmhouse, the way she has done since he was small enough to cup differently. I'm proud of you, she says, not about the test. He holds her wrists. I know, he says, not about the test. The letters were read, all 4 of them, not together, separately, privately, in the specific conditions each person needed. Zayden read his on the balcony of his apartment at 2 in the morning and sat outside for a long time after. Khalil read his in his car, parked outside the hotel garage, and when he came back inside, his eyes were clear and his face was composed, and he did not discuss the contents with his brothers because Amelia had written each letter for one person, and what she'd written for Khalil was Khalil's. Remington read his over 2 sittings, started, folded it, sat with it for a day, came back to it, which is how Remington processes everything that matters. Front to back, then back to front, then held. Dorian read his on the floor of the hotel room the night of the bank visit. He did not cry. He sat for a long time when he finished, and then he put it back in the envelope and placed it under his pillow. And the next morning he put it in his bag, and it has been in his bag every day since. The arrangement between them all, between Dorian and the 3 men he met on the worst and best day of his school life, is not a formal custody arrangement, and is not a scheduled visitation plan, and is not the particular stiffness of adults making agreed-upon effort. It is more like the beginning of a language, the early stages of learning someone's specific idiom, the way they mean what they say, and how they say what they mean, and what they go quiet for, and what makes them come alive. Khalil texts him sometimes, not every day. When he does, it's usually a question, a specific one, the kind that indicates he's been thinking about something Dorian said days ago. Dorian answers when he's ready. It works. Remington showed up once, unannounced, which Amelia commented on with the specific quality of her silence that communicates commentary, and sat at their kitchen table and helped Dorian with the French Revolution. He did know how empires collapse. He had a framework for it that was structural rather than historical, and it was the most useful tutoring Dorian had ever received. He got a 91. Xaden called on a Sunday morning, not to arrange anything, not to update him on the federal review, which is ongoing and will be ongoing for some time. Just a call. They talked for 11 minutes about nothing specific and everything adjacent. The city, the cold, what Dorian was reading, what Xaden had been thinking about. At the end, Xaden said, with the careful deliberateness of a man putting a word in a place he's been planning to put it and wants to get right, "Take care of yourself." Dorian said, "You too." It was not "I love you," and it was not "goodbye," and it was not the specific vocabulary of a relationship with a name yet, but it was real, genuinely, specifically real, which is, in Dorian's considered opinion, better than a name. The Federal Review is moving. Tanisha Crawford sends updates to Khalil, who passes them to the others in the compressed, accurate form of someone who deals in precision. The mechanism for separating Vasile Dragan's legitimate operations from the historical liability is being constructed inside the legal framework Dorian suggested in that conference room. Whether it works fully is a question that won't be answered quickly. But the question was asked by the right person in the right room, and that matters. Vasile Dragan returned to Manhattan once in the 3 weeks following. He did not contact any of the Voss brothers. He sent a single note, hand-delivered to Tanisha Crawford's office, addressed to Dorian. 3 sentences, formal, acknowledging receipt of the agreement withdrawal, acknowledging Dorian's standing, and 1 sentence at the end that said only, "The boy his mother raised reflects better on this city than most of what I have done in it." Dorian had Crawford read it to him. He held it for a moment. Then he said, "File it." She filed it. Cosmin Dragan did not return from Bucharest. At Harrington Elite Academy, the story of the 3 men in black suits circulated for 2 full weeks before the school moved on to the next thing. Dorian was asked about it approximately 17 times. He answered each time with the same 2 words, "family matter." And the particular quality of his stillness when he said it made every person who asked decide that further questions were not a good use of their time. On the last Thursday of the month, Dorian comes home from school to find his mother on the phone. She is in the kitchen, her voice low, her posture the particular upright it gets when she's talking to someone she's choosing her words with. He puts down his bag. He goes to the kitchen. He waits. She hangs up. "That was Khalil," she says. "I know." "He's coming for dinner Sunday." A pause. "And the other 2? "He says Remington has a standing commitment Sunday evenings and will likely arrive at 9 and pretend he was coming all along." She pauses. "He says Xaden will be there at exactly 6 because Xaden is always exactly on time." Dorian sits down at the kitchen table, puts his hand flat on the surface. The rosemary smell is warm and real, and the radiator is doing its unsteady clicking, and the light through the window is the grey gold of late afternoon in a city that has no idea what happened in its streets and its schools and its hotels and its courtrooms over the last 3 weeks. "Mom," he says. "Yes?" "Thank you." She stops what she's doing, turns toward him. "For what?" she says. He thinks about how to say it. He is, in some ways, still 16, still in the early stages of having the vocabulary for the largest things. But he is also the boy who sat in a principal's office and read 3 men without seeing them, and who asked a question in a boardroom that a room full of lawyers hadn't thought to ask, and who has been carrying an extraordinary weight with extraordinary calm because the woman who raised him taught him that calm is not the absence of feeling, it is the decision to feel things completely without being undone by them. "For making me ready," he says, "for all of it, before I knew any of it was coming." Emilia is still for a moment. Then she crosses to the table. She sits across from him. She finds his hand. "You made yourself ready," she says. "I just gave you time and a safe place to do it." He holds her hand. Outside, the city does what it does, big and loud and moving at its own pace toward its own ends. 3 men in different apartments in different parts of Manhattan are going about their evenings with something new in the composition of their days. Small, not fully named yet, not fully settled, but real. The kind of real that grows. A Sunday dinner is 3 days away. A French history test score sits folded in a bag by the door. A brass key sits in the drawer of Dorian's bedside table, not because there is anything left that it needs to open, but because it was the first thing that was ever given to him with his full name on it. And some things you keep not because they're useful, but because they're true. Dorian Marcus Voss Whitfield, 16 years old, son of a woman who built an empire of protection with nothing but patience, intelligence, and a love so specific and so total it survived everything anyone threw at it. Heir to a name he did not choose, but has decided to carry. Not because of blood, not because of contracts, because of a Thursday morning in a principal's office when 3 men walked in and told him the truth, and because of every single day before that when his mother told him, in 100 quiet ways, that he was worth the truth. That is enough. That is everything. Dorian walked into that school as an invisible boy. He walked out as himself, fully named, fully known, and fully seen. Emilia built the fortress. Dorian inherited the courage. And 3 men who arrived as strangers are learning, slowly and honestly, what it means to show up for someone after the hardest parts are already done. If this story moved you, if any part of it felt like something you needed today, please subscribe to this channel right now and turn on your notifications. Every week we bring you stories about family, strength, identity, and the people who love you in ways you don't always see until it's time. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below and tell us, what part of Dorian's journey stayed with you? What did Emilia teach you today? Your words in that comment section are a community. Build it with us. We will see you in the next story.